Thank you, Maud. Thank you for being such a great moderator. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, one and all. We're very excited to have you with us today and to be on this webinar here, focusing on the cannabis industry amid COVID-19, a truly unique time in our history with many changes afoot. And what we're going to talk about today is very quickly, I'm going to open up with an update on the CARES Act, give you some up-to-the-minute updates about that. And then we're going to move on to how COVID has been instrumental in shifting business realities for both the cannabis and the hemp sectors. And finally, we're going to talk about opportunities out of adversity, how sometimes out of these chaotic times comes exactly the type of opportunity that we're looking for. So on the next slide, just very quickly about the Caputo Group. We offer complete support services for small to mid-sized businesses so that you can focus on what you're passionate about your craft. So we take on human resources, payroll, liability, insurance, benefits, and compliance in order to give your small business, big business expertise. Today, on the next slide, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our panel guests. We're very lucky to have them with us. We have Jesse Bonteque, who's the director of the Oregon Retailers of Cannabis Association, ORCA. We've got Courtney Moran from the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association. And we've got Todd Key from the Greenlight Law Group. And I'm going to bring each one of them individually into the discussion. And I would also like to encourage them to chime in at any time. Just because it might be your section doesn't mean that you shouldn't chime in. So on the next slide, just to give us a foundational basis for our discussion today, the CARES Act. I've done several webinars now on the CARES Act, which is the economic relief legislation that has been passed by Congress now in several iterations. You can access those webinars on our website. The link to that is going to be on the last slide. Basically, the CARES Act provided for the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Those are two initiatives to help small businesses make it through the COVID-19 crisis. And many of you have possibly been following the progress of this act through the media. It ran out of funding in about 2 weeks, so it was off to a bit of a rough start. There was no precedent for this type of sweeping legislation before in this nation's history. Quite simply, the government had never really written a bill like this. And so additionally, the infrastructure that was chosen to implement the bill, which was the existing SBA infrastructure and personnel, it was just insufficient. It buckled under the pressure. They were not accustomed to the volume overload that happened. And subsequently, the banks that the SBA is working with to administer these loans to small businesses, they were very slow to process the loans, largely due to lack of standard operating procedures, lack of guidance and protocol. So in the midst of all of that, it was also inadequate funding that was released. There was inadequate guidance. I feel like in the last month, the phrase that I've used most is, we're still waiting for guidance. So it's all forthcoming. Literally, this is being created as it happens, and the ink on one iteration doesn't have time to dry before the next one comes up. And then famously, there's the lack of oversight on the program. You've probably heard about some of the numerous abuses of the Paycheck Protection Program this last week, with businesses that are publicly traded or well endowed dipping into these funds that were specifically earmarked for small business. Basically, what happened was that there was a stampede because they also told people apply soon because there is a funding cap. So that caused a stampede and it caused a bottleneck, and then the funds ran out. However, this week in the Senate, a $483 billion relief package passed this past Tuesday on 4/21. It's going into the House today, and it's expected to be passed in the House. And then it's expected to be put on the president's desk tomorrow morning for a signature. What this bill will do is, sorry? Okay, oh, sorry, I think maybe somebody's not muted. Okay. This bill provides for an additional $310 billion replenishment for the Paycheck Protection Program, $60 billion in replenishment for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, $60 billion for smaller lenders and the unbanked among us. So I'm looking at you, Hemp. $75 billion for hospitals and $25 billion for a nationwide testing program, which is one of the pillars of the reopening strategies that are starting to come out. On the next slide, let's have a look at the CARES Act vis-a-vis cannabis. So we do know that industrial hemp qualifies for the PPPLs and the EIDLs. And we also know that an additional $23.5 billion in coronavirus aid was appropriated for the agricultural sector. Cannabis, however, is essential yet federally illegal and therefore denied access to these programs because it is still under the SBA's old guidelines, which have not yet been updated to reflect the reality of today. So when you hold that up next to the fact that the US cannabis market is estimated at an annual $56 billion, that rings a little bit bizarre. So at this time, I would like to invite Todd Key from the Greenlight Law Group to join us. Todd, are you back on? Have you managed to get back onto the webinar?
I am back on.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so just on the next slide, we can see that Todd Key is from the Greenlight Law Group. They are cannabis attorneys in Portland. And Todd, I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about the legal and regulatory framework for cannabis amidst this crisis.
Sure, yeah, and I just to go back to what you were just talking about, the picture for cannabis businesses is pretty clear under the federal relief that's out right now. Is that cannabis, dispensaries are not eligible for this relief. There's actually a more interesting question that puts a lot of other businesses at risk too, because as part of these applications, applicants are not only asked to certify that they are not involved in illegal activities, but also that they're eligible for these loans. And you mentioned this a little bit, Sophia, when you were talking, that in the background, SBA has a categorization system. And marijuana and cannabis dispensaries are the obvious examples of marijuana businesses. But there's also a category of what's called indirect marijuana businesses, which a very plausible reading of the background rule for SBA is that any business that derives any of its revenue from a direct marijuana business is categorized as an indirect marijuana business and is technically, arguably, not eligible for this federal relief. Now, it's an interesting question because what's happening in the background, no one really knows what's going to happen in practice as these things all shake out, right? I mean, we've had clients who have applied for these loans because, as you said, there was a rush into the door to get your application processed as quickly as possible. And now people are questioning as to whether or not maybe they should have made those applications at all. And I think there's going to be a lot of interesting questions as to how that all shakes out at the end of the day. The hope and what people are seeing, especially for Paycheck Protection Program type loans, is that there's been such a rush to get, once the lenders were actually up and running and started taking these applications, there was such a rush to get money out the door that, other than sort of justification of a lot of the payroll expenses that your business pays, it doesn't appear that there's been a lot of investigation in terms of are these businesses actually eligible as just an ordinary eligible borrower from SBA, or are they indirect marijuana businesses who may face hurdles at the end of the day? A lot of those questions, unfortunately, there are no answers to right now. We're going to, with this second round of funding, it's encouraging now, especially on the hemp side, that the agricultural enterprises, as the bill that's being voted on today, it's been made very clear that farmers are now eligible for SBA assistance. So that's a big positive. But at the end of the day, cannabis businesses are still in this weird gray area as long as it remains federally illegal. And that sort of segues into one of the topics on my PowerPoint sheet here is, does it help? What does this do for our industry, just generally speaking, in terms of legalization? And that's also, I think there's two ways to look at it, as usual, if you're a half empty or a half full kind of person. The half empty perspective is that, before COVID-19, things were looking pretty good for cannabis in terms of legalization across the country. You had ballot initiatives in a good handful of states, in addition to legislative activity in some additional states beyond that. What we're seeing now is that sort of the ballot initiatives in states like Arkansas, Missouri, Montana, it's the efforts to get signatures on those petitions are running up against a brick wall now for obvious reasons, right? I mean, you don't have people out there able to canvass for these signatures, and some of those efforts appear to be stalled. Additionally, from just a practical standpoint, while this issue is near and dear to a lot of our hearts, state and federal government are going to have a lot of other pressing issues to deal with throughout the year of 2020. So it's not clear to me that the current efforts for legalization across the board are going to be reprioritized. Now that's, again, to flip back to the half full perspective, the other thing we've seen during this crisis is that cannabis businesses are essential businesses, right? They're performing essential services to the community. They're providing medicine to the community, and they're helping people cope with this situation. I'm proud that Andrew DeWeese of our law firm was instrumental in working with the OLCC in Oregon to get some temporary rules established to help cannabis retailers serve the community in those ways. So I think that there are positive ways to look at this as well, especially considering as states are looking to come out of the COVID-19 crisis and looking for other avenues to potential state revenue. I think cannabis, as always, is going to be a very attractive way for states to start looking at ways that they can cover some of these shortfalls. And maybe if the short-term picture isn't as rosy in terms of legalization, perhaps the medium to longer term story, starting later in this year, early to next year, we start to see revitalized efforts for legalization across the country.
Todd, I really thank you so much for your perspective on this. there's a historical precedent for the timing being really great for legalization right now. Maud, if you want to advance to the next slide. You know, there's a historical precedent in the post-prohibition era when alcohol taxes became a major revenue driver for federal, state, and local governments. And it certainly seems like both cannabis and hemp can come to the forefront now as, you know, not only sources of tax revenue, because governments are certainly going to be looking for that, but also as an employment and job driver, because, you know, the truth is that we're going to have displaced workers that will need to be pivoted somehow as well. So I really look forward to see what's going to happen with that. I think you probably heard about the Emergency Cannabis Small Business Health and Safety Act that was proposed, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's another way, that's another positive sign that the profile of the industry is increasing, that Blumenauer of Oregon and the senator from Colorado introduced that bill to make it clear, or to actually, you know, to enable cannabis businesses to be able to be eligible for SBA assistance. It's not only those senators, but there's also a bunch of House representatives who have signed on to that as well. Again, I see that as a positive step. I don't know, as a practical matter, if there are any realistic expectations in terms of will that be passed and when it will be passed. But at the very least, I see it as a positive sign that the more states and the more state economies rely on cannabis as a revenue generator, that their interests are being more and more highlighted and more protected at the federal level. I'm hopeful, right? I mean, I think we're all hopeful that the industry gets the protection and the attention that it deserves. So I think that it's a good thing to highlight, and we can all cross our fingers that maybe that will get some traction.
Yeah, thank you for that. The link to that is at the end of this presentation, just to let everybody know. So if you want to follow and support this bill, you can join the NCIA. I've included that information at the end. And to go off of what you just said, you know, Todd, I think the numbers also speak volumes. Cannabis sales spiked for the month of March. Your average dispensary purchase was up 47%. MJ Biz Daily put the March cannabis sales in Oregon at 84.5 million, which is a 6.4 increase over last year's record. And I think that those are pretty compelling numbers right there. According to Senators Wyden and Merkley, the states nationwide collected an estimated 1.3 billion in cannabis taxes just in 2018. So here again, you know, it's the numbers really do speak volumes, and this is where I would like to bring in Jesse Bonteque from ORCA to join us. Maud, if you'd like to advance to the next slide. Welcome, Jesse. You have done so much for this industry. Thank you for being with us today. We know that some of ORCA's legal priorities are fair taxing and access to banking for the cannabis industry and further steps towards enfranchisement. I'd like to get your perspective on what you see as a path for cannabis from controlled substance to essential industry to a legal commodity.
So just a little bit of, for all of those who don't know, ORCA is Oregon Retailers of Cannabis Association, but we represent every type of license in the industry as well as ancillary businesses. We have over 400 members, and I believe we are the largest cannabis trade association in the state currently. And so, you know, we started along working very closely with Andrew DeWeese's efforts on getting that a lot of information to the OLCC to advocate for smart rule changes that would enable businesses, cannabis businesses, to make an easier time of complying with the governor's executive order and providing safety to the customers and their employees. And that was very successful. But in addition to that, we were working from the whole time on using this as a way to educate people about the realities of the cannabis industry. We are all scared that if things get worse than they are now and the cannabis industry is shut down, then we have no safety net, there's no additional resources for us, and that's a little bit terrifying. And so I think the good news of this, of the current dynamic, and I use good news very generally speaking, because obviously there's a lot of tragedy going on, is that Oregon is currently, I think, has the third lowest infection rate in the country. Only Montana, Hawaii, and Alaska are lower than us. So I guess we're fourth. We were third yesterday, and that's really great, and it's a testament to the, I think both the culture of Oregon and our fellow citizens, as well as the leadership and government. But why this is important to us is because it enables us to stay open, right? As an industry, without seeing a huge uptick in cases and things like that, that means all the protective actions that our members have and the industry has taken has been successful. It makes it much more likely that we're going to be able to stay open, which is great. I just want to quickly remind people about the size of the issue. So far, Oregon has had 290,000-ish unemployment claims. That's about double what happened during the Great Recession starting in 2008. So this is a very large economic problem. The benefit, and the reason that's important, is because, as Sophia was mentioning, last month was a record month. This month is also looking very well, not necessarily record, but very good. Is that we generated $77 million in taxable revenue as an industry, and last year we paid about $102 million in taxes. We are still open, which means we're still employing people. And as has been noted, there's been a huge number of news stories and media opportunities and just comments on social media about the role of cannabis in people's health and well-being at this time, really establishing that we are an essential industry, whether the government recognizes it or not at the federal level, and that we have a very important role to the citizens of our state. And I think that that's seen in polling across the country. I think every poll I've seen has said a majority of Americans think that at least medical marijuana should be considered an essential business. People over 55, about 55% of pollsters I saw in a recent poll said that they thought that cannabis legalization was either a complete success or significant or more of a success than a failure. Only 6% of respondents said they thought it was a complete failure. So legalization is moving forward. And I think that, as Todd noted, it is sad that some of these legalization efforts have, that were going on in ballot measures or legislatively, like New York, South Dakota, I believe Arkansas and Missouri, have all been canceled or put on hold. But I think the role of this has been elevated, and that provides us an opportunity, as well as, because this has sort of energized the industry nationally speaking to fight for themselves to be treated like every other industry and every other business. There's been a lot of education going on. That we don't have access to bankruptcy courts, that we don't have access to banks in general, or just even the role and how important it is to the industries where we are currently legal. Generating $100 million a year in tax revenue for the state of Oregon, it's not nothing. And especially considering that I think Oregon, as long as the whole West Coast is really poised, once we get full national legalization, this is going to be a major and a massive economic driver. I mean, that $56 billion number is including the illegal activity for the size of the industry. And I've heard some estimates that it's upwards of $80 billion a year. And so all of that is just sitting there poised for the federal government to make progressive action on legalization and breaking down interstate commerce barriers. but the benefit to everybody will be that we can be an immediate job creator, immediate tax revenue thing. And talking to the governor's office, they specifically just wanted to communicate to us that yes, they have gotten our message, they fully understand our vulnerabilities, and they're going to try and do the best they can for as many people as possible. But they've lost $1.2 billion in lottery revenue for this state. So they are just sort of overwhelmed and desperate for resources as well. And within that framework, though, that makes our ability to stay open, generate a large amount of tax revenue, keep people employed, very valuable. And I think that that's the message that we are pushing for moving forward, is really drilling down and identifying how essential this industry is to folks. So Sophia, I don't know if that was a good answer, but that's my initial opening answer.
Well, Jesse, I certainly appreciate your dedication and your passion to what you do. And thank you so much for talking to us about it and giving us your viewpoint. Do you have any pointers for people on how they can get involved right now? Petitions to support, initiatives. Of course, your website is included at the end of this presentation as well. But can you give us some pointers on how we can get engaged and add our voices to these decision-making processes?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we're stronger together, right? It just simply is. There is a reason that every other industry has trade associations and lobbyists and organizations that they work with. It's because there is an ROI that is positive. They get a return on their investment for it. When we show up and we can say we represent 400 businesses in your community, that is a very powerful platform to be speaking from. So I do strongly encourage people to get involved in organizations. Obviously, I'd love you to get involved in ORCA. Our membership starts at just $35 a month. But, however it is, reach out, find somebody that you want to be a part of and get involved with them. The next thing is this is an election cycle. Our primary election, which in some localities will determine their local leadership in May, is May 19th, and people get to start voting, I think, in less than 10 days. Make sure all of your employees are registered to vote. Make sure your colleagues, your friends, your family are registered to vote. Cannabis needs to be a voting issue. It's the simplest thing we can all do is make sure we're registered in voting. Quick reminder, you only get to vote in partisan elections in the primary if you are registered with that party. So if you want to participate in the Democratic or Republican Party primaries, make sure you're registered accordingly. And registration ends, new registration ends the 28th of this month. Make sure that's an easy thing to do. The other thing is don't wait. A gentle outreach. This is an election cycle. Candidates want to hear from business leaders in their community. So do reach out both to your federal, your federal elected officials. We are very blessed in Oregon to have such a strong cannabis delegation. Peter DeFazio, Blumenauer, Wyden, and Merkley are amazing on our topics. Walden is the only one who isn't great, and he's leaving at the end of this. He's not running for re-election, Greg Walden. But I don't think his replacement will necessarily be any better, but still. And so reach out to them either to thank them. It really helps when you even just say, thank you for everything you're doing. That's all you say. It matters. Because they do like to know that what they're doing is recognized, and they are being out there constant advocates for us. At the local level, please do be engaged in what's happening locally with your district attorneys, your local state representatives, and state house races, or state senate races. I mentioned district attorneys because on any given day, they have more power over the citizens in your community than anyone else. Like, they can arrest you, they can order a warrant or a subpoena. Like, they have more authority than any other public official, generally speaking, on any given day. So pay attention to who those folks are. State representatives, state senators obviously matter because we have some great champions, but we also have people who know nothing about the industry and don't care. So be engaged, reach out to them, invite candidates to come and tour your business, talk to them about your personal experiences, talk to them about the role that you see your company playing in the community economically, socially, and morally, and be like every other business, demand attention considerately, but be assertive in that you deserve the same consideration as everybody else. So I think those are all some of the things to start with. The federal stuff, I agree with Todd. I don't think that there's much of a realistic opportunity that we will see federal aid be specifically given and granted to the cannabis industry. I've been talking with our federal partners about making sure they that the money that goes to the state has as few limitations as possible on it, so that the state is as flexible with spending that money as possible, i.e. that states could redirect that money to provide aid to the cannabis industry if the cannabis industry needs it. And our main message has been to state electeds beyond keep us open, to treat us like every other business, let us qualify for as many aid programs as possible. I'm not saying we need the aid. I'm just saying we deserve the right to qualify for it if we find ourselves in that position. So those are some of the basic stuff. I mean, my contact information is at the end. Even if you're not a member, but you want to do some of these things, reach out to me, call me, email me. Oregon is amazing. The access our elected officials give us is amazing. And just as a final plug, I want to say that we have Senator Lou Frederick and Jeff Merkley's business liaison speaking to our members on Monday at our monthly members meeting. That's also on the ORCA website. If people want to register, they can hop onto that even if they're not a member. So I think it's really just about being politically engaged and active and doing it might take you no more than 10 minutes, but we got to do that outreach and let elected officials know we're watching them and paying attention to what they're doing. That is the key piece. And I'm just trying to run through, because I have so many notes about all the things that are going on. I just want to make sure that I didn't leave anything out. I do want to really, again, draw attention to the fact that the Greenlight Law Group was a huge advocate early on, providing some great direction and guidance to the OLCC, and that the petition that they helped create and really led the charge on, and that we promoted and worked with them on, gathered over 1,500 signatures that was submitted to the OLCC. They adopted many of the suggestions and are working on many more. And I think, and I think the only other thing I will say is, just so everybody knows, talking to the OLCC, they have currently put a pause in place on processing new applications and are really focused on processing change of license and other applications related that current license holders have submitted, whether it's change of ownership, change of location, change of design or building design, or floor plans, and really focusing on processing those. Unfortunately, if you're waiting for a new application to get processed, it is going to be a little bit slow for the time being. And then the only other final thing, because I do want to mention to folks, is that this is going to be a longer process. Listening to the governor yesterday talk and reading all of the reports from medical professionals, really this is going to be a many months long unwounding of the current stay-at-home order. It's not going to be like, oh, May 15th or June 1st, we're all free to roam again. It's going to be a slow unwinding of the things, because until we build a community-based level immunity, we're going to be dealing with this virus. So it's a longer process. So if for shops and other people dealing with the public, just realize that the social distancing practices we're currently engaged in are going to be in place for many months to come. You're looking at close to like 8 or 9 months, maybe a year, maybe a little bit more, of some variations of social distancing requirements put in place. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking forward about your current business structure and how you're engaging with your employees.
Jesse, thank you so much for that thorough talk, and we'll certainly be keeping track of the reopening protocols and what that means for cannabis businesses going forward. Thank you again, Jesse. So pivoting onto our next slide here, I'd like to move on to industrial hemp amid COVID-19. There are some differences with industrial hemp as opposed to cannabis. You know, industrial hemp is a self-sustaining homegrown commodity which addresses multiple sectors. As most of us know, I realize I'm probably preaching to the choir here. Thankfully, it is nationally legal, so therefore it can access the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Some of the challenges that industrial hemp faces is that it is under those unbanked industry, you know, described as an unbanked industry, and it doesn't have super strong banking relationships yet. Yet we've seen that the CBD online sales are also surging. We've seen that possibly some delays in regulatory action by the USDA and the FDA could possibly buy this industry a little bit of time. And one of the things that is really interesting to me, and as a way of introducing our next panelist, is hemp's relationship to this country in times of emergency and you know, defense production. Many of you might have seen the short propaganda film Hemp for Victory, which was made around World War II to encourage farmers to cultivate hemp. And certainly this situation that we are in right now has been described in terms of this country being at war, that this is a quote unquote Pearl Harbor moment. And so our next speaker has ideas about how industrial hemp can manifest itself right now as a way of filling those needs for this country in this unprecedented time that we find ourselves in. So on the next slide, I would like to introduce to you Courtney Moran. She is a lawyer, she is an activist and a staunch advocate for industrial hemp. Courtney, welcome to the webinar. Can we, is she unmuted, Maud, do you know?
Here we go. Hi, everybody.
Oh, there you are. It's good to see you, Courtney. Thank you so much for being with us today and talking to us. Do you see any benefit for industrial hemp in terms of the delays in regulatory action? Do you think this could buy us some time? Do you think that industrial hemp can actually benefit from some of these delays?
I'm going to say yes and no, but I'm going to lean more toward the no side. You know, the 2020 hemp production season is upon us, and regulatory timelines are ticking for implementation. And so we really have to stay focused on where our attention needs to be and where our action needs to be. And so that means not only, you know, focusing on what we're doing every day in our fields and what's happening in the state, but really what's happening on the federal level. You know, we have to be focused on ensuring we have the federal reform that we want to see so that we can actually open things up for the states and for tribes. And so I've said this in presentations before, but that the battle's on the federal level, but it's really going to play out in all of your fields and facilities. And so we have to, you know, be cognizant not only what we're doing every single day, but what's really happening on the federal level and on our state legislative level. So I would like to provide kind of a general update of what's happening with the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association, and then transition into the work that's being done on federal and national campaign. So as Jesse said, you know, a lot of the progress that we've been able to see in Oregon is because of the collaboration in the communities that we see in our state. And I'm especially grateful for the community of the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association and how we've continued to come together over the years, not only internally, but working with other organizations like ORCA and our lobbying efforts. You know, we were all in the Capitol together this year, working on different policy, which was really fantastic. And, you know, especially now, it's so important for all of us to stay engaged with one another. And I know over the last, you know, month and a half, we've been having very engaging OHFA member calls. We've been talking about all different types of issues, whether it's policy, the issues folks are facing with the federal aid, the opportunities that they're having with the federal aid, farming practices and tips, genetic sourcing, the current market rates that people are seeing in the field, and different strategies and protocols for shipping. So it's really been wonderful to see that collaboration among our members. But, you know, as both Jesse and Todd mentioned, there's been a lot of advocacy campaigns that have been put on hold. And that's true for both the hemp and the marijuana initiatives. So at OHFA, we are still hopeful that there will be a special session some point before October to pass House Bill 4072, which is the bill that we had been working on. That is the Oregon State Plan bill to give ODA the proper regulatory authority to submit a state plan to USDA, give them the authority to do criminal records checks, update our definition, and clarify the criminal penalties that were put in place back in 2018 regarding import and export and direct sales to consumers of any products above 0.3% total THC. So to learn more about the work of OHFA, the 2020 session, and how to become connected with the Oregon hemp community, check us out at OregonHempFarmers.com. You know, I would say this is probably a more important time than ever to stay connected with all of us and with the communities, and providing opportunities like this webinar. Thank you so much, Sophia and the Caputo Group, for putting this together. It's extremely helpful in doing so and staying connected, staying together, and staying on top of what the issues are that we're currently facing, despite, or, you know, in addition to what we're all facing, of course, in our own homes. And so that's the point that I want to transition to some of the federal work that I have been working on. And, you know, I'm really glad that we started the presentations today where we did. You know, the work that Sophia and Todd have been doing, you know, really highlight what has been happening here. And like Todd said, the cannabis industry is not getting the attention that it deserves. And the same is true for the hemp industry. You know, while hemp is finally federally legal, the hemp industry is still not getting the respect or the recognition that it deserves. You know, our backs are up against the wall. CBD prices are down. You know, folks are still having issues with the access to banking, as Sophia just mentioned. We're having issues with access to merchant services. I mean, I recently had, you know, QuickBooks tell me that because our group's called Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association, they will not allow us to have transactions go through QuickBooks just because we say hemp in the name, even though we don't actually, you know, touch the plant ourselves as the association. So, you know, well, some things have been slowly cleared up, like the new access for hemp businesses with the COVID relief funds. We cannot just be sitting still. You know, that was the question you asked. Can we just sit still here? And we cannot. You know, the 2020 production season is upon us. And while the 2018 Farm Bill legalized hemp, and this 2020 production season will be the first commercial hemp growing season under the 2018 Farm Bill, the regulations that many of the states and tribal governments are operating under, you know, these interim final rules are more restrictive than the 2018 Farm Bill rules. So what does that mean? It means, you know, that we're moving toward more restrictive sampling, more restrictive testing, and more restrictive harvest protocols and timelines. So the interim final rule is leading to onerous regulations, putting our farmers at risk of losing valuable crops, and, you know, potentially them being engaged in criminal activity, which is the last thing that we want. You know, hemp farmers should not have any risk of going to jail just because of a slight natural increase in the THC concentration. And while, yes, you know, OHFA, we have been working on legislative reform in Oregon to give ODA the authority to submit a state plan, we have still, maintained that we will wait till the very last moment that we can to actually submit our plan, because we see the benefit of staying under the 2014 Farm Bill, just like Kentucky and just like Colorado and other leading hemp producing states have seen. So I'll note that as of yesterday, there were 20 tribes that had their tribal plans approved, 16 states that have their state plans approved, but 18 states have elected to stay under the 2014 Farm Bill authority. And these are the states that have more years of experience producing hemp under that 2014 pilot program. So while we have won the biggest battle with legalizing hemp, and myself having participated in the drafting and the negotiations that led to the language included in the 2018 Farm Bill, I know that our work is not done. And we cannot just sit back and watch our industry sink as we are just setting sail. So that's why my national lobbying firm, Agricultural Hemp Solutions, has launched a federal lobbying campaign to influence USDA final rulemaking to secure adoption of rational final rules that actually make sense, and to pass science-based federal legislation that provides for redefining hemp at the 1% total THC that we would like to see, and broaden protections for all U.S. hemp farmers and businesses. Now, while we're all practicing social distancing and, both Congress and our state legislators are very focused on addressing the COVID crisis, we have to realize that the time is still ticking on the USDA rulemaking. We have about 1 year and potentially up to 18 months to influence that final rulemaking, because the interim final rule sunset on October 31st of 2021. So right now, this year, in the next 18 months, are our opportunity to set the legal commercial hemp industry on a solid regulatory path forward. And I mean that on a federal level. And because what's happening on a federal level is going to impact everything that we're doing in our state policy. Now, I'll note that in March, the U.S. Secretary Perdue, he did testify before Congress about the draft status of these interim final rules, which is going to be very helpful in states, pushing to maintain regulatory authority under the 2014 Farm Bill as long as they can. And USDA also did announce that they are delaying the enforcement of the DEA registration requirements for laboratories. It does show that USDA is listening. They're listening to the concerns that have been put forward through the public comment period by everyone in the industry, the letters that have been sent by multiple senators and congressmen. And so it's really important to realize that our advocacy today is as important going forward as it ever has been. We have to come together as a national industry, even if it is virtually. And it's also important to remember that these issues do not just affect one state. They're not just affecting Oregon, right? They're affecting all 50 states. They are affecting all tribal governments and jurisdictions and our territories. They're affecting every type of cultivation, our processing, and every single one of us in the hemp industry. So as Jesse said, we are stronger together. We really need your support for the campaign. We need support to lobby USDA and Congress and ensure that these concerns are addressed and that the final rules provide the framework that we all want to see. Because once the rules are final, it's very, very difficult to open them up. And yes, we're dealing with this, very unprecedented crisis right now, but the timeline is still ticking on those rules. So if you are interested in learning more about the federal lobbying campaign, if you or one of your clients would like to support the campaign, we would welcome you. You can reach out to me directly at Courtney@agriculturalhempsolutions.com. And I would really appreciate any of you getting involved. Now, in addition to the federal lobbying campaign, I want to share with you another project that I'm working on that Sophia teed up very nicely, and it's called the Hemp for Our Future campaign. I'm working on this campaign in coordination with Vicente Cederberg LLP out of Colorado and the nonprofit Friends of Hemp. The Hemp for Our Future campaign is a social responsibility initiative that's empowered by a collaboration of hemp industry stakeholders and supporters. Now, as Sophia mentioned, just like back in 1942, when USDA called farmers to action through the Hemp for Victory campaign, and if you haven't seen the video, please check it out on YouTube. It's an incredible propaganda film that gives you a lot of information about hemp. But during that film, they teach you, here's the history of the plant, here's how you grow it, here's how you harvest it, here are all the different uses for the military. And it encouraged and actually successfully brought hemp back into rotation on US soils and helped our citizens during World War II. So the Hemp for Our Future campaign is now calling on the US hemp industry to again unite together, to take action, to prove the incredible potential of hemp in supporting our country during times of crisis. We all know that hemp can provide us with thousands of sustainable products used in our every single day lives, and our industry is actually very well petitioned to make a positive impact during these trying times. I know I just talked about all the difficulties with the interim final rules and the issues that we are having on the ground, but we do have a lawful commodity and we are able to still grow these crops. Many of the states that have been leading our production have, been and are maintaining their authority under that 2014 pilot program, which provides them with more ability to do things than under the restrictive interim final rules. But we have an opportunity to again show the world what this plant really can do. There's a lot of companies out there that have already started making donations to local food banks, to local organizations. And so what we at Hemp for Our Future are doing is creating a network of businesses that support the production of hemp-based medical and household materials, hemp foods, and hemp supplements to help medical professionals and others that are experiencing the devastating impacts of COVID-19. Now, I will, provide the disclaimer that any lawyer is going to provide you is that participation is limited to legal activities, but we would like your help. And how can you help? You can help by donating biomass, by donating feedstock, producing products, making a financial contribution to the cause, contributing your voice, having the support of your industry organizations, alertness to any of the resources in your network, and then spreading the word among your audience. Now, our official launch will be in the next couple of weeks, but we do have our website up. You can learn more about our work at friendsofhemp.org, and you can click on Hemp for Our Future. And you can also reach out to us directly at hempforOurfuture2020@gmail.com. So those are the main things that I have been working on, but I do think it's really important for everyone to remember how important this time is for all of us to stay together, to continue communicating, to participate in webinars like this, and really become active. A lot of us are sitting at home and our daily lives have completely changed up, but we cannot forget, what is going on long term and what we really want to see when this all is over.
Courtney, thank you so much. I really appreciate the energy and the dedication that you bring to what you do, and that this is something that's also very near and dear to my heart. So as much effort as I can put towards providing a platform and helping to aggregate people, like you said, it's important for us to stick together. It's important for us to exchange ideas like this and to participate in those processes that directly impact our lives and our livelihoods. So I want to thank you so much for all of your good work. Jesse, I'd like to thank you, and Todd as well. Greenlight Law Group, you are all pioneers helping to lead the way. I would like to just do a quick check-in with everyone. We are nearing our time limit right now, but we would like to give people an opportunity to do some Q&A. Maud, what do you think? Do you think we could stick around for about 10 or 15 minutes for some Q&A? Panelists, would you mind doing some Q&A? Would that be?
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
I've muted poor Todd and Jesse. I've muted them. Yeah, I think keeping in mind timing, what I'm going to do is, if you have a question, and if Jesse, Courtney, and Todd are available, please write it in chat, and then I'll make sure to ask it for you so we can kind of handle our Q&A that way. Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
Maybe while people are thinking of their questions, if we just move on to the next slide, I'd like to just show you, and like I said, this is available to you on the website. This is just a little legislative update, and then some of the links, you know, going over what we talked about today, the Emergency Cannabis Small Business Health and Safety Act, links where you can learn about that. April 6th, when our Democratic senators petitioned the SBA to accept loan applications from the cannabis industry. Any of those senators, you can go to their website, you can go to their press release page, and you will see the letter there. You're connected with ORCA, or Oregon Retailers of Cannabis Association, Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association, links to Courtney's campaign, link to the Greenlight Law Group, and a link to Vote Hemp, where you can also see some of these initiatives. Next slide. Next week, what we're going to be talking about in our webinar, same bat time, same bat channel. We're going to, next slide, we're going to give an update on this phase 4 of the CARES Act rollout. And then we are going to present steps towards reopening. So I've been listening to some federal and state plans. I was on Governor Brown's call yesterday, where she outlined how a reopening could look like. So that will be the topic for next week. Maude, do we have any questions that are coming in for our panel?
I think you'll see Courtney was able to share, or was kind enough to share her email address, which was a question that came in. We do have somebody who just got off the phone with the CDC who would like to share some of information. Are you open to me opening?
Oh, it's our very own Farmer Tom.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and unmute you, Farmer Tom. Oh, maybe.
Okay.
Hello.
What? Hi, how's it going? Yeah, I just got a call from James Couch. He's like one of the top scientists at the CDC, and he gave me a little bit of update on what's going on with COVID. And he definitely said that they're looking at dealing with this thing for the next 10 years. They really have no idea how it's transmitted from one person to another, and they're pretty much starting from scratch. We stay in contact and have, ever since they came to my farm in 2015, and he just told me, if you need me for anything, I'm always there for you. And so that's the latest from the federal government. And Courtney, any way I could help you at that level, most of the people at the CDC and NIOSH know who I am, and any way that I could assist you through FDA or whatever, I'll be more than willing to help you out.
Excellent, Tom. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the Hemp for Our Future campaign is for everyone to get involved with. We really want to help anyone that's been negatively impacted by the COVID crisis. We've been reaching out to several different nonprofit organizations around the country that are looking for different types of donations. And we've started coordinating with some different hemp grain manufacturers, hemp fiber manufacturers, and are trying to start making connections for them. We've actually put together a full campaign video, just like the 1942 video. And so once we have, a couple more of the logistics in place, we'll actually be doing our official media launch. But I know that a lot of you, are active in your communities, just like Jesse was talking about. And I wanted to make sure that I let you all know. And so if you want to, participate with us, if you have supplies that you can donate, if there's organizations that you know of that could be helpful or anything like that, please reach out to that email that I put into the chat, hempforourfuture2020@gmail.com, and we would love to have you participate.
Yeah, so and with today's discussion with them, I also, I brought up the point of the 0.3 THC, the 15-day harvest window, and the consumable issues that we're having, and how difficult it is for us to compete on a worldwide level since there's such restraints on them. So that's the message I passed across them today. He said he passed them on to the people at the FDA throughout the office.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, any information that any of us can spread, the focus right now is on providing this economic relief for a lot of folks, of course, treating people and making sure that they're staying healthy, but we can't forget, what our long-term goals are, and continuing to convey that message will keep it on the forefront of their minds.
Thank you so much, Courtney and Farmer Tom. We have a couple more questions coming through on chat. This question is, and forgive me if I butcher it, I have a holding company that is not cannabis plant touching, but owns a plant touching entity in Oregon. We've taken a little damage and I was considering applying for an EIDL, at least before the program ran out of money, at least for the 10K grant. Any indication that this course of action could be successful? Does anyone want to take that one?
I'll do my best. My first question would be, are there separate employer numbers for each of these entities? Because if there is, then I think that you probably could be successful in applying under the holding company. Like I say, at the end of the day, I don't know how much due diligence is actually being done in terms of, in terms of checking these businesses in advance. So I don't think that you're going to run into any problems on the front end. And the more separate those entities are, the better off you're going to be. And I want to know a little bit more about the plant touching entity itself. Again, if it's falling into the category of being an indirect business as opposed to direct business, I think there's probably less risk that way. But there's probably some more specific information to that question that could yield a better answer. So I'll just say generally, yeah, I think you're eligible for the loan, and I think it's worth investigating, especially in terms of you've mentioned the $10,000 grant that's coming through EIDL. Initially, that was a pure grant. Now they're basing it on number of employees. So that may be a consideration for you in terms of measuring if that's something that you actually would be good for you, if you could reap the benefits of. But we'd probably have to have some kind of an offline discussion in terms of getting more specifics into the identity of those entities to give you a better answer.
Thank you so much, Todd. That's fantastic. So we have several more questions coming through. This question, has the FDA fully turned its attention to the COVID-19 crisis, like everyone else? That was my parentheses. I don't know if everyone, like everyone else. Does anyone want to take that one? Do we have a FDA representative? I think this question is definitely kind of addressing, so the OLCC is definitely paying attention to COVID-related actions, and maybe not new business. So I think one of the questions is, hey, we may have some products that we're hoping to get approved by the FDA. Are they going to work on those during this crisis, or are they on halt? I think that's what the question is trying to address.
Is it specific to the FDA or to the OLCC and Ag Department?
I apologize. I think that I brought up the OLCC as an example. This question is specific to the FDA.
Courtney, or Tom or Todd, I don't know. I'm not currently doing much with the FDA, so I don't know if any of you guys are.
Let's see.
I mean, I would just say that I've seen, CBD companies have been making a lot of health claims related to their CBD products curing or treating or having a positive benefit on the impacts of COVID, and FDA has sent letters to folks that are making those marketing claims because they are not verified and they are not authorized. And I know that a lot of companies are starting to make CBD infused hand sanitizer. There is a lot of concern among the national industry stakeholders about this. If you would want to make regular hand sanitizer, excellent. There's really no need to be putting CBD in there and increasing the prices for people that really need access to this type of product. And so you still have to, they're still doing the same types of enforcement that they have been doing, watching the marketing claims. They haven't been doing much other enforcement otherwise. But, please don't make these unlawful claims. I know some people, again, are just trying to get rich quick and, take advantage of this quote unquote opportunity of what's happened. But, we really have to be conscious about what we're doing. regardless of what's happening with the COVID crisis, right? Any bad actor creates bad policy and precedent for everyone else that is the good actors. And I mean, I've seen it happen in Oregon, specifically with the criminal penalties that have been put in place in regards to import and export and direct sales to consumers. And, nationally with these bad actors, I mean, that, FDA is concerned because they've still seen so many bad actors. And all the, the folks that are these good actors, they're following their law, they're following their regulations, they're going through, GMP certifications, et cetera, like that. And that's what we want to be seeing.
That's a really good point, Courtney. And I think that's a great lead in. We do have another question here about marketing strategies to bring attention to this industry in an educational and productive way that will bring support from the consumer market. I think that's a really good question because as practically all of our panelists have agreed today, one of the things that this crisis has brought to the forefront is that both cannabis and hemp are essential for people's stress management and mental health issues right now. And so we've thought about, what are some good ways to capitalize on that right now and to bring more public attention from the consumer market to cannabis and CBD. Any ideas on that? We've thought about having an online CBD shopping network.
I just want to do a quick time check with everybody. We are, I want to respect everyone's time. I think this will be the last question. We've gone quite a bit over because there's just so much to cover, and I thank you so much. So if somebody wants to take the marketing question, it sounds like Jesse might have some ideas, and then I think we'll have that be the last question. Thank you so much.
Obviously, cannabis is very restricted on what it can say about benefits to health and well-being, but I think one of the key things that we have really tried to drive into the minds of our members when they're talking publicly and promoting their businesses, really talk about the role that they play in the community, that they are, that they are members of the community, they're supporting the community, and their dollars are going not just to themselves, but to lawyers and graphic designers and business supply firms, and that they are there as part of the community because they love and care about their community. And so really, just if you can't tell, the word is community. Like that, really focusing on and establishing a message around, here we are, this is what we're doing for here, we care about you, we're a part of you, we're just like you. And demanding gently and respectfully, though, that level of attention and respect, and just really being blunt and not even questioning it, as being like, we're here. And we're here to, this is how we're helping, this is our role in the community. You can do that by talking about the jobs or the, your care and appreciation for the area you live in. And you can do things also like, we've been promoting the Oregon Food Bank because the food bank is getting hammered. So, put up something in your shop or your business about donating, put it on your website, donate to these fine things, and really just demonstrate your commitment to the community that you're in, and supporting it. And every way you can do that is good. And that's my suggestion in relation to sort of really showing your place here.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And Courtney, Sophia, Todd, and Jesse, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you everyone else for jumping on, especially staying for so long, because there's just so many questions. It's very complex, especially for this particular industry. Thank you again so much. I think there's quite a few more questions that we were unfortunately unable to get to. Sophia, Todd, Courtney, I know you've already saved it, but Jesse, if you're willing to share your email in chat, perhaps folks can ask those questions to you. Again, thank you all so very, very much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next week. Thank you all.
On the last slide there, just on our little goodbye slide, if you would like a free consultation about how your business could manage the FFCRA mandatory employee sick leave, you can visit that web address. And then for additional resources, including a copy of this presentation, it is all archived on our Caputo Group website. Again, we support small and medium-sized businesses in those HR, payroll, and benefits sectors, but we also support businesses through value-added activities like this webinar. So I am so grateful to everyone being with us today. Thank you to our talented panel and to everyone who took time to be with us today.
I want to thank, just before everybody pops out, I just want to really do also reiterate thank you to the Caputo Group. You've been supporting the cannabis industry in 100 different ways for years now, and you've been an incredible partner. As we wouldn't have been able to do half the stuff we've been able to do around the state if it wasn't for them. So I can say, like, they are great and they love the industry.
Thanks, Jesse. Well, thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you get to find something fun to do. Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.